Surprise, guess I should have known. No, now my mind is blown. No, surprise, guess I should have known. No, no. Now my mind is blown. No, surprise, guess I should have known. No.
Hey, welcome everybody. It's Friday. Thank you all for being here. Welcome. Let's see. We've got Aunt Lala. Hello. Pointer Lover. Unseen Thinker's Life. Marie Arnold. Thank you for being a member for 6 months. Ava Hawkshaw. Shift Happened. Thank you all for being here. Thank you to the lurkers as well. I have 2 very special guests today. I got Jen Liu from the Ward Case Studies, and I got Alex Erickson from Alex Erickson. And we're going to be talking about their coverage, their like daily grinding, and I mean that in many different ways, coverage of the Lori Vallow case. It's not just the Lori Vallow case. It's the Vallow Daybell nightmare, honestly. Hey, Amelia Sparkles. Hello. Good to see you. So hello, Jen, and hello, Allie.
Hello.
You there, Allie? I know you were having some connection problems earlier. Are you there? Uh-oh.
Oh, if she falls off, she'll be back.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. She fell off. I'll say hi for her. Hi.
That's weird. She said she's in private chat saying she can't hear a thing when she's gonna join again.
Okay.
So I just before we get into the whole Vallow thing, I just want to recognize that it's been kind of an amazing time for true crime. Oh, there she is. Hold on. Can you hear us now, Allie?
Yes, I can hear you now. Perfect.
Okay. Hello. Welcome.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for agreeing to be here. So, as I was starting to say, it's been kind of an amazing time for some of these true crime cases, and especially for those of us who have been watching some of these cases from the very beginning. Now, I wasn't a big Letitia Stout follower, but to the point that, like in fact, I kind of avoided it because I saw how incredibly heartbreaking it was. You know what I mean? It was such a crazy case, but she was found guilty, and you guys were also covering that at the same time as the Vallow case. And then also, of course, Lori was found guilty. And also today, Jacqueline, now you guys might have a better handle on this than I do, but my understanding is, I haven't been able to look at this. I've been a little bit busy today, but there was a guilty verdict in the West Boys case. But was it just for Jacqueline, or was it for both Jacqueline and Trezell? Maybe Jack could tell us if you guys don't know.
Yeah, it was both, but this is the thing. So they were charged with, I think, 7 counts, and it was for both boys. So they were both found guilty for one of the boys, but one of the boys, the jury couldn't come to an agreement. And I was shocked by that because they deliberated a little less than 3 days. And it's just like, you give up that fast, but they said they didn't think they could come to an agreement, if they kept going. So
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
That's really weird. Well, at least there's they do have some convictions there. And I mean,
Right.
that one to me seemed like it from the very start, those West Boys. I even, I live in California and I lived a few hour drive before. I lived a few hour drive from Bakersfield where all that happened. And I went and took a drive up there just to kind of check things out. And it's freaking eerie, specifically where they were living at the time. It's really eerie.
Would love to see that in person. It's so different in person when you visit like places because I've done it twice now, and both times it just gives you a whole nother, you cannot quite capture on camera some
Yeah.
of that it's crazy.
I took some footage while I was there, but I didn't get out of my car ever. I just drove by, and in all honesty, when I drive by crime scenes like that, I feel like an interloper. I feel like I'm invading privacy, even though I'm not. I'm not even getting out of the car. You know what I mean?
Right.
And like I drove by the Watts house at one point when I was in Colorado, and I felt like an interloper then too. Like, and I drove by fast. You know what I mean? I was like I drove by fast, but not over.
You weren't like rubbernecking or anything like that. You just put the pedal to the metal, and that was that, huh?
Yeah, I mean, it was. I wasn't trying to speed through the family neighborhood or anything like that. But yeah, I didn't want to be like slowing down in front of the murder house. You know what I mean? There's something that couldn't do that. Welcome to the people coming in. Thanks for being here. But today, I wanted to talk to you guys about the Vallow case. And I know that you both were covering it and following it from the very beginning. But I wanted to find out what it was like. Well, first of all, as I said in your chat, especially in Alex's chat, I was there a little bit more than in Jen Lou's chat, but I want to thank you for doing what I couldn't do. I really wanted to cover the case more regularly while it was, in trial, but I did one live stream, but then after I heard the evidence about when they found the kids, I lost it. And I am like, I couldn't picture myself doing that every day. So it really, it was so nice to see you two being able to go through that grind. And I respected your ability to do that with such grace and respect and with such a hard work ethic. You know what I mean?
Thank you so much. Yeah,
Thank you very much.
Go ahead, Jen. I want to hear your thoughts first.
I have to say, to be perfectly honest, Allie has a better work ethic than me. Because there were days when I was like, I can't do it. And she would be like, that's okay. We'll do it on my channel. And I would be like, okay. And she had a better, it was very draining, very, very draining, physically and a little and emotionally too.
Look at the rainbow, you guys. Do you see it?
Oh, yeah.
So pretty.
Yeah. I think it might be a little harder to see through the camera, but a little bit of it. Yeah.
Dang it. Yeah. I'll try to capture it in a picture, but yeah, I don't know. I think it's because I'm so interested, because as far as work ethic goes, it really depends for me. Like I'm so interested and so passionate about these things. It's easy, right? Like I can talk about it forever and it doesn't really feel like work. The only hard part is, these gruesome details. That's pretty hard. And finding a way to deliver that factually without being disrespectful. You know what I mean? It's tough, but I think when you're interested in it, and like for me, that's what pushes me. And also, yeah, I think just that. Yeah.
So let's jump off of that. How did you, so you mentioned, covering such gruesome details in a respectful way. How did you find the way to do that? Are there any examples you can find that of times where you were thinking about, how do I talk about this in a way that, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
How did you, can you find, are there any examples of what you mean by that?
Well, I mean, you're having to deliver, like, for instance, with Gannon, what happened to him was horrific, and this is my thing. I think what matters is getting it right and being factual, and because it's hard to hear, but it was hard for Gannon to go through. So I think that's what Jen and I kept telling each other and ourselves. We're like, this is important. It was hard, it's hard for us, but we owe it to Gannon. So, and some things there's just really no way around it because it is that gruesome. So I think the best thing that you can do is just be factual and to the point, and really make sure that you're factual, because these victims, we owe them that. We really do. It's important to tell their story accurately.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think to piggyback on what Ali said, Gannon and all of the victims that we cover in these cases, this was the worst day or days of their lives. And I think that we owe it to them to speak about what happened and speak about it respectfully and speak about it accurately without over sensationalizing or over dramatizing what they went through, because I just feel like that's what you should do.
Right.
I mean, can you imagine how terrifying it would be to be an 11-year-old boy, and this is the person who, by all accounts, took care of you for the last 6 years?
Mm-hmm.
Alone a lot. I don't even think that Al would dispute that. I think Al would say, yeah, she was alone. And then with JJ and Tylee, I knew that Lori Vallow was an absolute monster. I think we all knew that she was an absolute monster. However, I don't think we realized, well, for me anyway, until that hair evidence came out, because
Uh-huh.
this is the hair evidence that severed the trial. I don't think I realized. I thought I always knew she was in on it, right? I didn't know that she was in on it like that.
Mm-hmm.
And the hair evidence, I mean, you can't. I suppose you could, but you can make a lot of explanations for why her hair would be there. They lived together, et cetera, et cetera. But they didn't talk about a multitude of hairs being found. They talked about a single hair being found, and that changes things.
Mm-hmm.
And where it was found.
Right.
It wasn't, so I feel like we owed it to Tylee, we owed it to JJ, we owed it to Charles and Tammy too, to talk about what happened. And my coping mechanism is I will use humor. I mean, let's be honest, there were some really outlandish things that occurred in that trial, i.e. the storm. And I'm not making fun of the crime itself. I'm poking fun at the ridiculousness that is Chad and Lori Daybell, frankly. And that, so.
Well, I want to come back to that hair evidence and other things in the evidence, but you guys both brought up the importance of accuracy, in your reporting. And what I've noticed in true crime on YouTube and in social media is that a lot of true crime creators um, don't they don't understand what it means to actually make sure that something is factual. You know, that they see that maybe a report from some, social media website or Reddit is fact without checking other sources and things like that. And so I'd like to enlighten people as to what steps you take to make sure something is factual before you report it, or even if you're not reporting on something that's factual, how you disclaim it. You know what I mean? How you're saying, hey, because I've noticed that both of you will say, okay, I know this is not fact. This is something that is just being reported, but it's interesting, right?
Mhm.
So, what are the steps that you go through maybe to help other people understand what it takes to really make sure that something isn't just willy-nilly fabricated?
Well, first of all, I always when I put out any report, it's really important to me to cite sources, and I'm talking about of everything. I'm going to tell you exactly where you can find stuff on your own to do the same research if you would want to. But I think, I've learned over these past couple years of doing this and I've made mistakes too, but I've learned that you cannot ever be sure until you see it in the court paperwork from police and from the investigators, and then you still have to question things. But certainly, just because you hear it on the news. Now, when I hear Ashley Banfield with her secret sources, to me, I don't put a lot of weight in that, and I let my chat know that. But then if I see Ashley Banfield interview Kay and Larry Woodcock, of course, that will hold a little more weight because we know them. We know they're closely related to the investigation. But at the end of the day, to get the black and white facts, I think it needs to be released from the courtroom, period. And that's it.
Right. How about you, Jen?
Well, for me, just pretty much exactly what Allie said. When the tweet came out from Ashley Banfield that there was a secret grand jury, which let me just say this, that is a redundant term. Grand juries are all secret. Okay.
Right.
So that's really redundant. But when I made a post, because I went to Ellie and I said, do you want to talk about this tonight? And of course, Ellie was like, of course we have to talk about it. What you mean, hey? And I was like, okay. So, but I put allegedly, because for quite some time after I wrote that post, Banfield's Twitter was the only place it was being reported. And unfortunately, I would like to be able to say that, she's moved more towards mainstream media with News Nation and that, that should be enough. But for me, it's not. And so,
I agree,
and then the other thing that I do for legal terms or understanding and explaining is I will go to Google and I try to stay away from sources just for legal terms and sometimes for other stuff too, but like Wikipedia. And the only reason I stay away from Wikipedia is because Wikipedia can be written by people like me and you, right? And I'm certainly not an attorney. So I have tons of different sites that will explain really well what these legal terms mean, what the implications are, and what the next step and phase is, if any. And I will read and read and read and read until I feel like I understand it, and I can not only can I understand it, but I have a grasp of the concept so that I can then explain it, because that's important. It's great that I can understand it, right? But what's the point of me talking about it if I can't get what's in my brain out of my mouth in a way that people can also understand?
Right.
So that's what I do.
One thing interesting about, you mentioned Wikipedia, I tend to use it as just a guide, not as as an actual source of truth. But, I do think it's more, it's more credible than like your average Joe. You know what I mean? And the
Well,
reason
right.
and the reason I say that is because I did have to look into Wikipedia for many clients, and because
Oh,
some of my clients, they didn't quite understand. They were under the impression that, oh, you are my PR rep, you can just go in and write a Wikipedia entry for me, right? Right? And so I looked into it, and no, not anybody can
okay.
write a Wikipedia entry. You really have to go through hoops, and you cannot be connected to the person that you're writing about. And
I didn't know that.
yeah, there's like a certain validation, verification steps you have to go through, and if you don't meet those qualifications, then you have to find somebody and pay money to them, and then they have to meet those qualifications, and sometimes they don't. So
Oh,
it's
wow.
but what the Wikipedia page does always provide the citations, and if they
Yes.
don't provide the citation, then you should question whether that fact is actually true, whatever's written there.
When Letitia was on trial, I remember that Dorothy Lewis, the doctor, I grabbed this screenshot. Someone changed her Wikipedia, and it was like, Dorothy Lewis is currently making a fool of herself, testifying during the
Yes.
Letitia trial. We were
Yes.
like, oh my God.
Right.
Yeah. So what kind of validation did they have to write that? No, I
Yeah.
mean, like, for it depends on what it is that I'm looking up. For laws, I try to, okay, so like when when the probable cause affidavit came out, right? And then Brian Koberger's attorney filed the discovery request. And one of the things that they were asking for was anything from a co-defendant or whatever. And people didn't understand. They thought that maybe there was somebody else, right? That Brian didn't do it alone. So what I did was I straight went to the Idaho Code of Criminal Rules. I forget what it's called. That's not what it's called. But there is an app. You can look it up. It's on Idaho's government website, and it lists the rules of discovery during criminal proceedings. And that's how I found out that is standard operating procedure, because if she had not requested that at the very beginning, when she requested other parts, or when she did her discovery request, if at some point a co-defendant had been developed, she would not be granted access to any of the statements or any of the other investigative materials surrounding a potential co-defendant. You have to ask for it at the very beginning. So it was really just her covering her own bases. But that's why I will go directly to the source. So I went to the criminal code, to the criminal rules of discovery. That's where I went for Idaho.
And I do that too. That's why I put that up on the screen. I think that's good to actually read the criminal code, and read the laws of the state before, trying to have a conversation about them. Not that I'm a lawyer. It was interesting. I got an email from this company that has a app where you can copy and paste legalese into their system, and it translates into natural language.
Oh, wow. That would be very, very helpful. Because sometimes I have to continue to Google after that. Like, there are legal terms that I don't all the way understand the concepts of. So I will just continue to Google each legal term until I understand it.
I'd love to have that. I don't know. It's really frustrating because it makes it hard when you're trying to present factual information. Like like right now with that Henrietta case, there is so much misinformation. You have family members telling different sides of that story and different versions of events. But like sometimes I'm sorry, I get really frustrated because I'll see creators out here just making up stuff completely out of, now all of a sudden, Brian Koberger didn't do it. The police framed him. You hear so much stuff. The Idaho 4 people are with the cartel. You have
Oh,
creators who openly say, I'm not watching this trial, but I'm going to report on it. Here's what happened today. Stuff like that.
right.
It's like, it's so frustrating. I got to tell myself, like, I'll even tell Jen, I'm like, why do I care about this? I need to, like, because little things like that will bother me when I see it. And I'm like, nope, just keep doing your thing. You other
Yep.
people. But it makes it hard because when you share subscribers, I've had people come in my chat and with this theory that the police planted the sheath, and that,
Yeah.
with the things like that. And it's like, how do you address those things head on in your own chat? It's
Yeah.
just difficult.
It is. It is very frustrating. And that's why I wanted to showcase, like I have this other thing that I do on Fridays, as you may know, called Vulture Culture Fridays, where I
I do
talk
watch
about,
it.
where I talk
I watch
about,
it. You do a good job. You do a really good job, Lynn. You
Yes.
do.
and I talk about creators like that, and there's an abundance of them, unfortunately. But that's why I wanted to showcase people like you on another Friday, because I also want to highlight people who are doing it the way that is doing right to the victims and the families and to the case, and isn't overstepping boundaries or trying to be what you're not and things like that. Coming out here, I feel like there should be like some DSM diagnosis for true crime, vulture culture, pimp, tragedy pimps. they all fit this. And I don't want to go too far down this rabbit hole. I still want to stick to your coverage, but they all fit this kind of mold of overly litigious, completely gaslighting, like hyperbolic, accusatory, using the legal system. Like it's several of them fit that same exact mold,
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's uncanny. There really should be a DSM-5.
Well,
I also think that there should be no, listen, I think the people that watch me and you and Allie know what our limitations are. And I don't ever feel, I'm not too proud to say, I don't know. Because sometimes I don't know. And I think that's like a good thing to remember. We are, except for the creators on YouTube that are attorneys or psychologists in their, or other experts in their respective fields, it's okay to say, I don't know. I would rather say, I don't know than make something up or try to explain something that I don't know. It's okay to say, I think it's okay. I think people respect people who can say, I don't know.
Yeah,
That's my answer.
I do too.
And also, I have theories too. I have theories. I have questions about things, and it's, I think it's really important. You got to be clear about what's factual, what's theory, and don't try to push your thoughts and opinions onto everyone else, especially when it's just theories and the facts aren't out yet. Like, don't try. I don't know. It's tough. You got to figure it out, but it's tough.
Right. This Mel says there is, Lynn, is there seriously a DSM-5 about on that, or is it because I'll trust you to and I'll go look into it, or are you saying that one of the definitions that's already in the DSM-5 fits?
Yeah.
I'll wait for the answer.
I love her vulture culture coverage. I really do. She does a good job.
Thank you. So I want to go to some. You were mentioning the evidence in the Vallow case, and how her hair showed up in the duct tape, right? In the duct tape that was found around JJ's. It was around his. And trigger warning, you guys. It was around either his mouth or his head, right? Is that
So
correct?
it was. He had a plastic bag over his head. also.
Right.
This
Yeah.
specific hair was found in the duct tape that was wrapped around the outside of the plastic bag that was put over his head. That's why it's important. That's what makes it different.
Now
For me anyway.
Say more about that. What that meant to you.
Well, okay. So whenever you have a victim and a potential perpetrator who reside in the same house, okay, there is it's perfectly normal. I promise you, if somebody were to come and take a lint roller to my clothes, my husband's clothes, and my kids' clothes, there is bound to be some of each of us on each other's clothes because we live together. Okay.
Right.
How, okay. But what they didn't talk about was if that's how it got there, right? Because it was that's what they call secondary transfer. If that's how it had gotten there, you would expect to see multiple hairs, meaning if it got caught up, say there was a piece of hair that was, you know how if you have long hair and you wash your kids' clothes or your own clothes, just clothes in general, how sometimes you will pull them out of the washing machine and you'll notice like one of your hairs is kind of interwoven in the fabric of a shirt, for example, right?
Yeah.
That's normal, okay? But then you would expect to find other hairs matching Lori Vallow other places, right? There would be multiple hairs or another hair on the other parts of the duct tape, right? But that's not what it was. It was a single hair. So I found that to be, and there were hairs that were missing, right? There weren't, JJ's hair wasn't on that outside duct tape, the outside bag on the duct tape found on the outside of the bag, because had there been, the defense would have raised those. That's all part of discovery. So the defense would have said, well, what about these hairs and what about that hair? Do you know what I mean? And there wasn't any of that.
Well, I
They
would have
didn't do any of that.
we talked about this. I'm surprised they
Mhm.
didn't like use, hey, this is Lori's hat. The duct tape came from Lori's house. They didn't even, I don't know. That kind of surprised me. Because I get what you're saying of the multiple hairs, and I agree with you. You would expect, but also I think, is it still possible? Probably. Not probable, but it's possible. So
Yeah, so one of the reasons I thought that was interesting that you brought up the duct tape is, I just watched an interview with one of the jurors in the trial.
Mhm.
And he said that the hair on the duct tape wasn't it for him. Like he felt that could be explained by, a single hair was carried from the person who ultimately did that. Like her hair got on whoever ultimately did it, but it was just everything else all put together.
right.
Mhm.
So, I found that interesting because, I thought the hair in the duct tape to me was a big deal, but it also, I could also see it explained away. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Well, yeah, I would have entertained an explanation, except for there wasn't one given, which I thought personally that is something that they should have attacked immediately, and they didn't. And
Yeah.
that's why it was a big deal for me. But I think that it's always interesting, and I really wish that there would be one juror at least from the Leticia Stout trial to give an interview, and maybe they will. Maybe they just have collectively decided that they're going to take the therapy and counseling that the state of Colorado offers jurors, and then once they've done that or whatever and had some time and distance from the trial, maybe then they will. Because I'm always interested in what weight different jurors give different pieces of evidence, where I might think one thing is hugely significant. If I were to poll 11 other people, I guarantee you we would get 11 different answers about about the weight of certain evidence. And I always find that interesting. I had an author on my channel a few months back, and we were talking about the West Memphis 3, and we were talking about oh gosh, what is his name? The confession killer. Henry Lee Lucas. He
Uh-huh.
wrote a book about a victim who Henry Lee Lewis, took credit for, but it turns out that it wasn't him. Anyway,
Right.
and we were talking about like, there wouldn't it be better or a different type of what outcome would be different for trials if there were professional jurors, people who went to
Yes.
school to learn about, what it is to be on a jury and, evidence and stuff like that, because I just think it would be interesting because everybody feels differently about trials. And that's what makes our system in the United States unique.
Yeah.
We all weigh evidence differently.
Yep.
There's those dang seagulls again.
For me, the most interesting thing about this hair and the testing for it, and also the testing of those tools and stuff, there's two things. I was very interested in the hair because Chad's attorney was so interested in it. So that I think is another reason, and also because when they did this testing and when they tested for the DNA on the tools, which came back to be Tally's, they tested it up against Lori, and JJ and Tally, and also Melanie Gibb, and these tests were done in 2021, 2022. After they were done after she testified for the preliminary hearing with Chad Daybell. So the most
Mhm.
interesting thing to me is, are they looking at her, and did she possibly face charges? I want to know more details about that. Is she
Oh
still
yeah.
looking at
Hmm.
charges?
They worked, that hair was a huge, okay. Allie made me aware of this too, because I said from the beginning about the hair that this was a huge roll of the dice on the part of Chad's attorney. Because what does he know that we don't know um, about that hair? And and Allie was like, well, yeah, because Chad was very cool, calm, and collected, which he always is. Chad gives nothing during any of the court proceedings. He sits like a
Yeah.
statue.
Yeah.
But his attorney was adamant about this hair being tested, and that hair sample was compared against Melanie Gibb, and that was in 2023. They're still using her. And maybe it was simply to rule out because at one point she might have been considered a person of interest, potentially having participated. Who knows? But whatever the reason is, it's interesting that it was there. And that's also another reason why I think that the hair for me, gave a little bit more weight. Now, of course, the jury on Vallow's trial is not going to know that. They wouldn't have that information. They wouldn't know that it's Chad's attorney that pushed and pushed and pushed for it to be tested. And they also wouldn't know that it is that hair and the testing surrounding it that is what ultimately caused their trials to be severed. They wouldn't be privy to that information. And I'm curious if they were, because now they can look at it, now they can talk about it. And I would be curious if their opinion would change, if it would weigh more to them.
Mhm. Allie, just so you know, the last time you weren't muffled anymore. Just
Okay.
a few minutes ago you were.
Okay.
You're fine. So tell me about, was there any point during your trial coverage where, during, when you were talking about it or, reading about it or whatever, where you were absolutely shocked? Like what was the most shocking thing that just like had your jaw dropped?
The text messages.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the text messages for me too.
That was it for me too. But tell me more about like specifically which ones and why.
The most shocking was not even surrounding Tally and JJ, although those were quite shocking too, and surrounding Tammy and all of that stuff, and the Alex and the comment that was up on the screen, I agree with. But the most shocking part was for me, Melanie Boudreau's kids and how close they were to almost becoming they not being here anymore. And that one was at 8%. according to Chad. And seeing Chad and Lori laugh about taking their pain tolerance down and upping their level of pain, and no, not yet, because we're going to be in the car with them, so you don't want to be annoyed. Wait till you get out. Like, I just could not get over that. I thought, oh my God, those poor kids, all of them. This is so tragic. But imagine, like, I can't imagine how Brandon felt hearing that. And thank God that they survived.
Yeah.
I think that was one for me, but the other one for me was also finding out, because Allie and I can't remember if we discussed this privately or on a panel or both, probably both. We were trying to figure out, me really, what this connection Lori had with Chad, because listen, I believe in love at first sight and all that stuff, right? And all that, but I could not figure out how it escalated to where it escalated to so quickly, and to find out that they actually knew each other and had some type of correspondence prior to when Melanie, because Melanie Gibb is the one who takes credit for introducing them. She was under the assumption that she knew Chad first and introduced Lori to Chad. But that's not actually how it happened. And so that to me was shocking. Hearing the discussion, also, for the other one for me was about Tylee. Hearing Lori, anything that Tylee did was not her, and she could be taken over. And the one thing that didn't get answered for me with respect to that part of the conversation was exactly when that text message took place. The one where she says that Tylee has been very helpful and very sweet, and that's not her. Because
or something, right?
Yes, yeah, because there is there's some, I can't remember where it is or who said it, or I think it comes from Melanie Gibb, but that Tylee heard Lori calling her a zombie, and Tylee's response was, "Not me, Mom." And I'm curious if that text came after that, as if Tylee amended her behavior because she could tell that being a zombie, I can't imagine, I don't think there's any circumstances under which somebody would be referred to as a zombie that has a good connotation to it, but nobody thinks about it meaning that your life is going to be taken from you, right? But I feel like Tylee was trying to change her behavior so that so her mom wouldn't be angry with her and so impatient with her, and just, it broke my heart, because nothing that kid was going to do was going to be okay with Lori. Anything that she did, if she ate a red popsicle when 3 days prior it was strictly orange popsicles, that would have been a sign, And it tells me that it had nothing to do, really, in my mind, with any type of religious beliefs at all. It wasn't about her belief system. These kids, point blank, were a burden and a hindrance to this wonderful, fantastic life she was going to live with, Chad the Toad.
Yeah.
I know that's not professional, but whatever.
I 1,000% agree. And the fact that she knew to couch all of that language in these, to hide their real intent in these, religious terms, shows that she knew what the hell was going on. She
Correct.
knew what the hell they were doing. And and by the way, thank you very much for the super chat, Crime Me River. Appreciate it. I truly believe that Tylee, she was 16, right? She was 16, about to turn 17.
Mm-hmm.
She knew a lot more, and she was probably pushing back on all this BS, right?
Mm-hmm.
On this, she has this a new man in her mom's life. Her stepdad had just been murdered by her uncle, right? She's probably, and I remember Colby saying that he went over to the house right after Charles was murdered, and they were all having a pool party, and he saw Tylee and she broke down. And to me, I just think Tylee knew so much. So you're right. They were just working up all the different reasons and validations in their minds,
when
to
saying that, I thought the same thing. How much did she know about Charles? Did she like about being a zombie and that kind of stuff? So,
exactly, because she heard all the zombie talk about Charles, right? Now he's dead. And who knows how much she knew about Tammy's death. How much did Lori tell her? A lot of times parents like Lori treat their daughters a lot of times like their friends and their confidants. And if any of you watched the footage of them all going to the police station when Charles tried to have Lori institutionalize or get taken in for the psyche val, Lori brought Tylee and Melanie Gibb in with her, her flying monkeys, and Tylee was right there, standing with Lori. And I'm not blaming her whatsoever. She was indoctrinated and doing what she had to do, but she was completely backing up Lori's stories, right? In that room. And so I feel like she probably was putting up that front for Lori, but then in the background, Lori was probably telling her a lot more and thinking that Tylee was going to go right along with her, and Tylee might have been pushing back, and now Lori's having to paint her as a zombie,
Right. But isn't it messed up that Tylee at 16, almost 17, understood the ramifications of being labeled a zombie, yet these grown-ups, yes, Melanie BP, I'm looking at you, Melanie G, looking at you too, Ian, David Warwick, Zulema, I'm looking at all y'all. Y'all didn't know what was up? You didn't know the score?
Right.
Stop it. That's what I find the most disgusting, frankly.
Completely. I feel like there are people that were part of that quote unquote cult, doomsday cult, that we don't even know about, that knew. You know what I mean?
Right.
That may still believe some of that BS.
I think they all still believe that BS. That's just my opinion, and this is how I do it. I will say that's my opinion. There isn't anything in any report that you can find that I can point to that will say that, and that's my reason for believing that. My gut tells me that it is too convenient that the gaps in their memories, these specific people who were in the inner circle, who were a part of the castings, etc., the things that they don't remember are all the same, and that is not how memory works. That is, that's just science. I can't be responsible for science.
Yeah, exactly. So for a little bit of comic relief, how about Melanie Gibb skulking into the court with that freaking outfit on that she had on with that hat?
Oh yeah, she looked like Carol Walsh from or Cindy Walsh. She looks like, because Carol Potter is the actress's name, Cindy Walsh. She was wearing her Cindy Walsh gardening outfit from Beverly Hills 90210. Yeah, trying not to be noticed. It's about as effective of not being noticed as Leticia. I would just like to drive my own vehicle to the hospital because I don't want to be noticed. Meanwhile, then she's now brought in by two detectives on a stretcher in the back of an ambulance. Like, fuck off, Leticia and Lori, both of you, and Melanie, all y'all.
Yeah, this is, for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about. What the heck?
I'm telling you, Lynn,
Why is she
Google.
wearing a freaking plaid? Like, she's going into a courtroom, y'all. She's wearing a plaid shirt over what that. It almost looks like there's a sheen on that dress. Like, is she trying to? Did she? I was stunned when I saw this. What a dork.
She's with a is that FBI or is that do you know?
I don't know.
He's some type of law enforcement escorting her. But I mean, she looks like that she's going to go gardening on Little House on the Prairie. Stop it, Melanie.
And Melanie, the hat doesn't cover up who you are. We all knew who you were, honey. The reporters knew. That's why they took your picture. Like, it shut.
Exactly right. Exactly right. And listen, you already have trouble with your bangs. I do not think that wearing a hat and then taking the hat off, because you know that was not allowed inside the courtroom. It helped your bang situation at all, ma'am.
Not in your best interest, Melanie. Not in your best
interest. No, ma'am, Pam.
Did she think that people weren't going to recognize her or something wearing this getup? I mean, she stands out.
Yes.
Yes. I mean, look, she thinks that people believe that she didn't know that she was really trying to be McGruff the crime dog when she called Chad and Lori and, recorded the phone call as if she really wanted to know where JJ was. As if, first of all, you already knew that Lori lied to begin with. Okay. You already knew she was lying because she told you that she told Kay that she had cancer of all things and that you knew that was a lie. You knew it all was a lie. Okay. And let me tell you what happened, Melanie. And at some point this will come out. This is what happened, I believe. I believe that Melanie did what Chad and Lori asked her to do. And then she told David Warwick about it. And David Warwick was like, oh, hell no. You call them right back right now and get them on and record them. And that's what she did. I'm shocked. I mean, there is a little bit of that conversation that could be considered entrapment had Lori and Chad actually admitted to anything. Probably would have been thrown out. But Melanie's out here wiretapping, and she did it of her own volition. It isn't like when what's his name, Al Stout was recording Leticia. No, he had the FBI backing him up. Okay, they were aware of it. They were in on it. They were helping him. No.
Or when Ian Pulowski was wired by the FBI, right?
Ian was wired by himself as well.
Oh, he was? Okay.
He started out, if I'm remembering correctly, I be side-eyeing Ian too. He started out by just hanging around with his phone on record.
Okay.
Yeah. These people are what? I mean, they're like what? The bootleg version of the mystery gang, Scooby-Doo? Yeah. Like, come on, Melanie, you going to roll up in your van and solve some crimes?
They actually sound like some of these true crime YouTubers we've been talking about.
Melanie does for sure. And so does Ian. Yeah, I didn't want to be too conspicuous. So I would just sort of, kind of hang around with my phone out. Like, really?
Yeah.
Really?
Let me content later,
Right. Ian was doing it because he was going to use it as leverage. He knew that Melanie BP was in hot water. He knew she was going to be in trouble. And that's why in that statement that he wrote out, he says he makes that dig at law enforcement because they weren't going to just be like, oh, you have secret recordings. Oh, cool. Melanie's off the hook. They didn't want to, they wouldn't allow him to use it as leverage. Melanie, if I were both of you Melanies, if I were you, I would not be sleeping easy at night, ma'ams.
Nope, I wouldn't either.
I'd be worried.
Here's a different question for both. Oh, sorry. Were you going to say something, Alex?
Just, I'm hoping Arizona indicts Miss Melanie Boudreaux Pulowski. Since, which I don't think chances are they won't, because Lori's was done last year. We're just now finding out about it,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's crazy. Was there ever a point in time in the trial where you thought there might be a not guilty verdict?
For me, I was not so sure that they had Lori on Tammy. I felt like, from the jury's perspective, I felt, because I knew stuff obviously that wasn't in the, actually, in the trial. So for me, but I could see how there would be a possibility that the jury may not convict Lori with respect to Tammy Daybell. But that was it. There was never, no, I never thought for a second that they were not going to convict Lori.
How about you, Allie? You there?
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh. Can you hear
Technical.
us?
Hear you, yes. No, I'm sorry. I missed Lynn's question. I heard some of Jen's answer. Bentley and Emily got in a fist fight, and Emily was screaming, so I was muted trying to referee that. Apparently, Bentley said he had to. Oh my God, he just told me it's a lesson. This is his exact quote. It's a lesson.
Oh God!
I know. I was like, oh my God, no, you can't.
Are they okay? Are they
Bentley,
okay?
Yes, they're okay.
Allie, I'm kind of thinking that we were meant to be friends, because that's some kind of stuff I used to say when I would beat the crap out of my sister. It's a lesson. I feel like maybe I can identify with Bentley a lot. Now, I know the right thing to do would be to say no, 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 but low key.
So, Allie, the
question. Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
I just said she's meant to guide me through this, but yeah, what was the question? I'm sorry.
Was there ever a point when you were covering the trial that you thought they might do a not guilty verdict?
Not really, but then again, yeah, I think I worried about it. I think you almost, it's human nature to worry about that, because, there's 12 people up there and one person is all it takes. And also, if she was not in Idaho, I truly believe she could have gotten away with it not guilty by reason of insanity, possibly. Because like I said, it takes one juror, and she does have a lot more markings for that than like Letitia Stout. I thought she would be guilty. After I heard the text messages, I thought, no way, at first I was more worried until the text came out, and then I thought, how could they hear that and not convict her of at least the conspiracy? There's no way. So yeah.
What did you think when the defense decided to rest so abruptly?
I was annoyed, because I'm sorry, but we don't feel they've proven their case. Like, really? And I just was annoyed. Like, you're not even going to try. I also thought it's so telling that not one human on this earth stood up for Lori Vallow for her defense. Letitia Stalk at least had a couple, because we can compare it to that. They both happen close together. They're different, but there's similar things. And she had at least Dorothy. And then, I just think with Lori, that says a lot. There's not one person that's willing to get up there and say, Lori was an excellent mother. Lori would never do this. Well, or any of that stuff. There was no one they could pull for her, and they didn't even try. And I thought that said a lot.
Yeah.
Okay. So the trial cover in me says, well, to be fair, the defense, they're not obligated to put on a case, right? That's not how our justice system works. The burden of proof is always on the state. They don't have to call a single witness. The defense doesn't have to call a single witness. They don't have to do anything. And that would have been fine, and I could have accepted that. But usually when that's the plan, they will more vigorously attack the state's evidence, and that's done through cross-examination. And I did think that it was sort of it irritating move on their part to introduce those podcast tapes, because that is dirty pool, in my opinion. That is a way of allowing the jury to hear Lori Vallow in her own words without Lori Vallow Daybell having to take the stand. And I don't appreciate that. It's dirty pool. It was a very, very fine line. And, it's probably not going to be something that Lori appeals on because it worked to her advantage. Because that's exactly what they put it in for. That's why it was admitted. They wanted the jury to hear Lori in her own words, her own thoughts, but they don't want her to be subject to cross. And I just don't like that. But I thought that, like with the hair on the duct tape, I thought that there would have been a much better way that they could go about attacking that. And even like when I watched the pretrial hearings before, they stopped and they were audio only, with Chad, especially with Melanie Gibb, his attorney went right at her. And Archibald did a little, or I can't remember which one cross-examined her, if it was Archibald or Thomas, but they kind of did and asked about her, memory lapses or whatever, but they could have gone in more, and they didn't. And I felt like they kind of didn't really, I'm not going to say that they were ineffective, because that's not true either. I just thought that, I guess they did the best they could with what they had. I don't know. I don't even know how to put it, but I thought they would put something on. Something.
Yeah, I agree. They seemed fairly competent, much more competent than that first guy she had for a while, that Means.
Yeah.
The family lawyer kind of guy that she had for a while.
Yeah, I mean, they're not, and I would say that, although I have to say this to just, as a disclaimer, an ineffective assistance of counsel is an incredibly difficult appeal. It's very rarely successful, et cetera, right? But in this case, I don't even think I would never say that they were ineffective. Like, they were effective. They were competent. They knew what they were doing. And I'm sure they're second guessing themselves too. I'm sure they're saying, oh, I wish I would have asked so-and-so this question, or I wish I would have dug in a little harder or been a little bit more aggressive. To be quite frank, neither side was all that aggressive, which I found to be very interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
I did watch this interview, actually, and I thought it was a really good interview. I have so much respect for Nate Eaton, and he did a great interview with this juror, and this juror did say she was like the face of evil. I feel like I've now seen the face of evil.
Yes.
And he said that, he had a lot of insight. He was talking about, oh, sorry. My dog, it's so funny. He is so, he's the sweetest, kindest dog, the most gentle dog, but he has a bark like a freaking monster.
I love it. What kind of dog is he?
He's a golden doodle.
Oh, wow. That's because I was like, that sounds like a lab or a golden retriever bark.
Yes.
They have a very distinct, I have a lab, so I know. They have a very distinct bark.
I thought it was a retriever type of bark too. Wait, is that the same kind of dog as Kate had from the Idaho 4?
Exactly. My
Yes.
dog is exactly like Murphy. Yes.
Oh my God, that is a loud bark. Do they all bark like that?
Yes.
I couldn't. This is the first time I've had a golden doodle. And I'm trying to quiet him down right now. Sorry, y'all. Sorry for those of you with the headphones on and everything. Sorry.
Like that, like you wouldn't hurt. No, not like that. It was just like if you're in the house with something like that, or it was like a very,
Meanwhile, Allie has a whole dog named Rambo. acting like she has one of those little dainty dogs,
No, I'm thinking about the girls in the house, hearing the dog and stuff like that, which they did say they heard the dog. But that's all. It's a bark that would you would think you would really notice. Even I don't know. It's interesting.
I will say this for labs. I was raised with labs, and I've always had labs myself. And so the first lab that I ever had on my own as an adult was a black lab, Baxter, and he would only bark if there was something actually there. He
Yeah.
wasn't just a random barker. Now, my chocolate lab, Nestor, he is not quite as good as Baxter was about that. But like Baxter very rarely barked at other dogs. The only time he would ever bark at another dog is if another dog was like approaching mainly me
Yeah.
or the kids. But
Yep.
Nestor, if he can smell the other dog, they're too freaking close. And that's
Yeah.
enough but it's a different bark that he does for another dog versus an actual human. They're usually not like, they don't usually just bark at everything all the time.
Yeah.
They're usually good like that.
Well, I'm a jumpy person. So like sometimes when it is just dead quiet and then all of a sudden he just breaks out with that bark, I fly out of my seat. I'm like, ah! Oh my. And even now, you would think that after I've had him, he's going to be 7 in a couple of months. And so after I've had him for 7 years, you would think, but still sometimes. But you're right. He only barks when there is someone like walking by the house or, and when he barks at other dogs, it's like I want to play with you kind of bark. It's like, it's more playful.
Those are so beautiful dogs. I mean, my gosh, they're so stinking pretty. Is yours the same color as that one?
Yeah, my dog looks almost exactly like that dog. Murphy.
TT's does too. But she Charlie, almost y'all have twin dogs.
Yeah, and my dog has the same coloring, everything. It's sometimes it's uncanny. But anyway, so we were talking about
the defense.
Yes, the defense, and about whether we're surprised about them putting on, or not putting on a defense. I honestly wasn't that surprised because after hearing all that evidence, they weren't gonna. I'm not surprised that not one person stood up for Lori. I'm really honestly not that surprised. I mean, really, and that there was like, what did it just didn't seem like the defense had anything to work with, but sometimes you never know. Sometimes they have something up their sleeve, and they seemed like they were competent, they weren't complete.
Yeah.
They weren't complete doofy, like, doofy. But so what do you think? Oh, Steve, sorry.
That's okay.
That's all right.
And he's not even that loud. I just, not on the phone, but like, I mean in person. It was like a strong bark.
No, I know. It's distracting to me when he barks, when I'm trying to be live.
Yeah.
I can't believe you guys haven't heard Mac has been bitching this entire time that we've been live. The cat. He has been bitching this entire time.
These animals.
It's just funny when people happen to be walking by right when I'm live, right? It's like, thanks, but
Yeah.
Oh, whatever. So what do you think is going to happen in terms of what's coming up next for, Chad and Lori in Arizona and all of that stuff? Are you planning to do the same thing for Chad's trial?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And we are also planning to, because now the indictment against Lori with respect to Brandon Boudreaux has been unsealed, Ellie and I, we were able to cover Leticia much more in depth because it was live. We could watch it in real time. Whereas with the Lori Vallow Daybell's trial, we had to wait for court to be over and then it to be uploaded. And so she and I have been planning to go back and revisit and do a more comprehensive coverage of the individual testimony. And I think people might be like, why? It's over. We know how it's going to end, right? Well, yeah, that's true. But also, it'll give us a good idea of what's coming up for Chad, because the evidence that they have against Chad is this, and Lori is almost the same evidence. Now, they might have left some stuff out because their trials were severed. So there might be some stuff that would be new and, just more direct towards Chad, but it'll give us a good idea. And I am very curious and watching very, very closely what is going to potentially be taking place in Arizona. Because I have a feeling, I find it interesting that when everybody who was going to be called as witnesses, potentially, whether they were called or not, when they were on the witness list, they were ordered not to listen to the trial audio or watch any news, read anything, et cetera, typical normal stuff, right? Well, Melanie BP thought it would be a fantastic idea to listen to her ex-husband, Brandon Boudreaux's testimony. Right. And they tried to, and Ian even said that he listened to like 10 minutes of it. And initially the defense wanted both of them thrown out, but whatever, Ian's conscience kicked in is what he said. And he was like, oh, I'm not supposed to be doing this. Brett, stop playing with these people. This is my theory is Melanie never wanted to testify against Lori. I don't there is something, in my opinion, quite hollow about, I just found out, now I see the truth, blah, 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 blah. I'm just so shocked and all that. There's something very disingenuous about it. And now I have decided that it is going to be my mission, not to just say that's how I feel, but to go back and find specific examples of where she has contradicted herself. Melanie Gibb as well. Oh, I'm coming for you too, she bangs. Because I know that when I listened to her testimony, I know that there were points in that testimony when I was like, wait, that's not what you said before. And I know that for the jury, it only counts what they hear in the court, but I wasn't on that jury and I'm not held to that same standard. So we will be doing a deep dive into the Melanies, into Zulema, because I do firmly believe that they are still believers. I feel like they are very similar to the Scientologists. They don't want to the Scientologists don't like David Miscavige and they regard him as a test. If they walk away now, they have failed the test. And when L. Ron Hubbard comes back, they won't be part of it. That's why they be putting up with the stuff that David Miscavige pulls. And that came from an ex-Scientologist who was very, very close in the inner circle, in the Sea Org, and did security for L. Ron Hubbard. So that's kind of how I think of these people. There's some very specific language that people of the Mormon faith use when they believe in something. They use the term, I know it to be true.
Right.
And when they leave the Mormon church, they use the opposite. I now know it is not true. It means something very specific to them. And it is a very specific, there's no changing it. They don't deviate from that specific phrase. And I've heard it frequently from people who are part of the church. And then I've heard the opposite from people who have left the church, and I'm fascinated by it. And I don't hear that out of Melanie. I mean, you've never heard her say, I looking back, I think it's a bunch of hogwash or anything like that. She's very careful. She will say things like, well, I can't say that I believed 100%. And I don't, she's very wishy-washy. And excuse me, but if I were recruiting for the 144,000 minus two, obviously, because Lori and Chad, right? I don't need somebody who's wishy-washy. So I would have cut Melanie from jump, which tells me that that's not the truth.
Well, and also for me with them, and I'll just, and I want to hear what you're going to say, Allie. But for me with them, it's not just the language they use; it's also it's the combination of the language they use and their body language and the looks on their faces. It's like they're very self-conscious, as if they're still in the belief, but they're trying to use words that show they're not in the belief. And they're like walking a razor thin line. You know what I mean? And they're trying not to offend the people in the belief, and they're trying not to seem guilty. That's right. That's what it looks like to me.
It looks like that. And Melanie Pulowski, and then I want to answer the original question, but I just want to say with Melanie Pulowski and Ian, we have her body cam and stuff from her arrest, her interview with police. We have her interviews with Ian. We have Ian's testimony. There's a lot of things to compare and contrast and see where she's misspoke, has different. I think that's going to be really interesting to go back into that. Because, in my opinion, she needs to be charged. I mean, look at the text messages about killing her kids. Let's lower their pain tolerance and then up their pain a little bit. I mean, I'm sorry. She was calling Chad father. If that's not the sickest thing I've ever heard, excuse my language. But come on. So I really think that she deserves a second look. And you know what? Hopefully it'll get a lot of attention. Maybe she'll see it. I think that people need to know and be talking about what she's got going on. But as far as your original question, what do I think about the upcoming trial with Chad in Arizona? So for me, I think it's going to be the most interesting part of the trial with Chad. I feel they'll probably be very similar because they did say they didn't want to sever him because it was, the same evidence. But the difference is going to be prior and his reaction to that, the way he questions these witnesses, the way he questions Melanie Gibb. He gives her hell. You guys know that. And
he is not a fan.
So that's going to be really good. Now, also, Lori, her attorney, made some digs at Chad, and apparently she was upset about it. I could see Chad and his attorney, they've already made digs at Lori. His attorney won't call her Lori Daybell. He calls her Lori Vallow. And there's little things I've picked up on, and I really do believe, I don't think he's going to fully turn on her, but I do believe he's going to give it to her a little harder than she did him, and I don't think he's going to be crying about it and mad about it. I think he wants to, hey, whatever Chad has to do. And then
exactly.
About Arizona, oh God, I just can't wait to see what happens, because I think, like I said with Melanie, I think that more people need to pay for what happened there. I want to see the inner workings of what happened. How could Lori be charged with conspiracy to commit murder against Brandon? And Melanie is part of their group, Brandon's wife, and with them, and she's not charged too as a co-conspirator. That makes no sense. So I want to see how that plays out.
Yes, especially because after Melanie and Brandon split up, before he was shot at, okay, their friends, mutual friends, were basically hiding Brandon out.
Yep. Yeah.
Keeping his whereabouts secret, even more so after he was shot at. But the fact of the matter is, Melanie, of the people in this little cult, the only person who actually knew where Brandon was, his address, and that is because of the children, was Melanie. So she had to have said something to somebody at some point. And again, I go back to, if Tylee at 16, 17 years old, she was on the peripheral of this circle. She was hearing what was going on, probably not all of it, but if she was able to put it together that being a zombie equates to death on some level, right? And she was heads up about it. Where were these adults? So that's, to me, is I can't, I just, they don't get any, there's no pass for them. I don't
Yeah.
think that Melanie Boudreau was manipulated, not in the way that she's saying.
Right. Well, I think, overall, in general, she was manipulated, but like you say, not in the way she's saying. Right.
Right.
It's
Exactly.
you have to have been manipulated to believe that, sorry, you guys, bullshit. Right. I mean,
Well, right, exactly. Like, I don't understand these cults. If you've ever like paid attention to these cult leaders, right? They're like, Jesus is their direct supervisor. And this is the only thing, like, they've never really accomplished anything in their life.
well,
And
not just their direct supervisor, they are Jesus.
some of
They
them,
are.
yes.
Well, Lori said told some people she was Jesus, right? Or at least the descendant of Jesus, and that she had the message of Jesus in her. And so, and Chad said that too,
I mean, I think from like with Melanie, both Melanies, all of them really, the truth of the matter is, Charles, you can write, okay, so they're talking about zombies. Charles has, several dark entities, all the things, right? And boom, he dies. But then it's investigated, right? And it's ruled self-defense. Okay, so you might can overlook that one. All right. But then Lori and Chad are telling anybody and everybody who will listen how dark JJ is, how dark Tylee is, and how dark Tammy is. And at the time, if nothing else, Melanie knew that they were missing, and she dang sure knew when Tammy died. So
Yep.
you don't put two and two together then. You include your own children in it. Like, come on.
Right.
That's where my issue is.
And I know I've said already that, starting to watch and thinking about covering the trial, and then, bailing out on my part part of it was watching Brandon's testimony. That
Yeah.
broke my heart because, I guess, he's been very quiet up until, he came and testified, and he was like a broken man on that stand.
Yeah, he
And
was.
it was so hard to hear that testimony and to hear, his voice. And I didn't know that he was that close with Tylee and JJ. And, so it was so, it was gut wrenching,
Mhm.
And he's clearly so hurt and confused and traumatized. And I just thought about, that experience for him, and then, branching that out to all the other people in the family and in the community that are experiencing the same. But of course, he had the, assassination attempt. I mean, that's one of the things that just really got to me,
Didn't he? Well, I think it's sweet how close he's got with Kay and Larry, especially after.
Yeah.
And also, wasn't he the one that identified JJ? Didn't he
Yes.
go for them? I thought so. Yeah. So yeah, I feel for him. I don't know. I can't imagine, like I said, how he felt hearing those texts, knowing that your kids were that close to being murdered by your wife's
Right.
family, her new husband. Like,
Yeah.
oh.
Absolutely insane. So what else? What's next in terms of like what I don't know. I just want to touch on this, and I know I belabor this on my channel a little bit much, but for me, the murder of Charles kicked everything off. Like the events leading up to it were like, if the police in Arizona hadn't listened to him, first of all, listened to him rather than her, and allowed her to manipulate them, Of course, I always maintain anybody can be manipulated, but police need to be much more educated and aware of this shit so they can't, so they can be more manipulative proof. What, I don't know what's a good word, manipulation proof. That kicked off the entire sequence of events. Now, if they stopped, if they had, committed Lori, would that have changed things? We don't know, right? If they had listened to Charles, would that have changed things? We don't really know, but it could have potentially curbed things. It could have potentially, had them investigate a little bit more what was going on in those people's lives, and it could have changed things. So to me, it's a lot like when Gabby Petito and Brian Laundrie were pulled over by the police in Utah, and they completely read that situation wrong.
Yeah.
What do you guys think about all of that?
Well, I think there needs to be better training. I'm with you. They need to, they need to be aware. And I'm sorry, if you can't give them that training, they don't need to be taking care of these kind of situations. And I don't know who would, because like with Gabby and Brian, that was just regular patrol officers. Well, they all need to be trained to handle it then. That's just the truth. Because these people who commit crimes like this, they're oftentimes very manipulative, very sneaky. They have, that narcissistic, psychopathic tendencies, things like that, to where they don't feel empathy. They don't probably show much emotion. They are good at mocking. That's one of the things that people that that are either narcissists or psychopaths, that's one of the things they do. They will mimic other people's emotions and feelings and actions because they don't feel it themselves. So they watch and see how you act. So, they need to have better training for sure.
Yeah.
I kind of have a different perspective. Ugh. Okay. Do I think that overall, in general, that the police need better training? Absolutely. I think that goes without saying. However, when we watch the body cam footage, we are watching knowing how the story ends. We're picking up on things with hindsight. The police are encountering this gentleman for the first time. They do not know him. They don't know Lori. They're meeting him for the first time. Okay. And they're listening to him. But remember, there's laws that they have to follow. And because when they ask Charles, and this is I'm not blaming the victim. I'm not excusing any of this. None of this should have happened. None of it. So let me say that first. But we're watching it with hindsight. So they asked him a very specific question about a specific threat, and they are bound by the law. And Lori didn't make a very specific, overt threat to him. Okay. And not only that, but remember, when they are trained to handle these types of situations. There needs to be better training in that. It's not so much to be manipulation proof, but more to recognize that men can be victims as well. That's where I think it needs to change, because after the O.J. Simpson trial, laws changed. The victims of domestic violence don't have to prosecute. They can even sign an affidavit of non-prosecution, and the state will still pick up the charges. That is because most domestic violence victims don't want to they don't want to prosecute because they're scared, right? And cops have learned how to handle that better, but they've learned how to handle it when the woman is the victim. And I think some of the questions that they were asking, to me, it seemed like they were checking Charles more than they were checking Lori. They were, I think, trying to ascertain if she fled out of fear of him, if there was some type of domestic violence situation going on where Charles would have been the aggressor and Lori would have been the victim, because that's what they're really trained to spot. I think we need to do a better job as far as that type of training goes, that we need to recognize that men are as vulnerable,
Yeah.
probably if not more vulnerable, because people don't see it as right, and it gets reported even less when the man is the victim. That's where I think the
Also,
change needs to come. That's just me, though.
that's a good point. I agree with you, but also I think that cops are they're just not great with people with with the mental health issues, and we've seen that. I
Yes.
mean, you'll see when a mom calls, this I just heard about. I've heard of this happening a few times. A mom calls because her son is psychotic and she wants him to go to a mental hospital, and they send cops, and the dude has a knife, but he's not trying to attack the cops or anything. He ends up getting shot though, because cops are not able. I think there has to be a better protocol or procedure or something for people with mental health issues. Like when mental health comes into question, it's not just your regular run in.
And I will say, I know what I was going to tell you before when the dog was barking. I wanted to tell you, because we were talking about Nate Eaton. And I personally think that Nate Eaton is who you should aspire to be like when you're covering a story, because in a case like this, because Nate is very, very good at covering the facts and personalizing the victims, because a lot of times what happens in these cases, we're stuck trying to figure out the whys. The whys come from the perpetrator, right? But Nate is really good at telling the victim's story, and that is what I would like to aspire to be like. My own brand of it, of course, I can't be Nate Eaton, but I would like to tell this. I would like to talk about these cases and tell the victims' stories in a way that is honors them. And yes, I think it's important to focus. We do need to understand the whys, right? Because the whys could potentially prevent this from happening again. People like this should be studied. We also need to know about the victims themselves, and he does a really good job of doing that.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think so much true crime content tends to focus on the killer or the perpetrator rather than the victims, and the victims, it's their story too, and they are the ones without the voice. So I totally completely agree with that. I also completely agree with you, Jen, when you say, hey, look, we don't know. We're looking at the Charles situation with the benefit of hindsight, right? I completely agree with that. And when I looked at the body cam footage, I tried as much as I possibly could, knowing that I had that bias, trying to look through those cops' eyes, thinking, okay, I don't know this guy. I don't know him from a hole in the ground. He kind of sounds crazy to me right now, saying that my wife is out of her mind and she's saying that I'm this zombie or I have a evil spirit in me called Ned Schneider, blah, 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 blah.
Right.
And all of that is understandable. Here's where it really gets to me, and Lily touches on it here with this comment. Lori was at the station, and Charles had the order, which the junior cops were mesmerized by Lori and told her how to get out of the order, and that is exactly what pissed me the fuck off. So,
you're 100. That's right. Lily. You're 100. I have to agree. You're 100% correct there. Yes.
Yep.
You're 100% correct. That's where but those are, I don't think those are the same cops that interviewed Charles.
No, well, actually, I think you're right about that. It's hard for me to remember right now, but that also shows another problem, is that they're not like the chain of command of information on specific cases, or at least the communication pipelines.
Like it's not cohesive. They're not talking to one another, which is important, especially in a situation like this. I agree. There's a lot of changes that need to happen. There's a lot.
Exactly. And also with respect to, recognizing that men can be victims too. I think that's part and parcel of recognizing that anyone can be manipulated and anyone can be a manipulator, a woman and a man. So a woman can manipulate anyone into believing that it was the man who is the abuser when it's the other way around, right?
Right.
So that's why it's so important to have an understanding of the kinds of tactics that are used by manipulators like that. And anybody who's willing, in my view, a lot of people will say, physical abuse isn't as bad as emotional abuse. In my view, by the time you get to the physical abuse, there's already been emotional abuse. That like anybody willing to go to the extent of physical abuse is also an emotional abuser, probably. And
well, usually that's how it starts, right? Usually the person that what they do is they build you up, right? You're the best thing that ever happened ever, and anything and everything. You do everything great, right? And then little by little, over time, they start to break you down. So then you're completely reliant upon them, because I've seen this happen. I personally, not to me personally, but I have watched it happen to somebody close to me, and they build you up, right? Then they tear you down. So then you're at a point where they are your everything, that you need their approval, right? And so you think when they're hitting you that you must have done something. And then there's that wonderful honeymoon period that happens afterwards, right? Where they're so apologetic and it'll never happen again. And they hate themselves for doing it, And by that point, not only are you physically broken, but you're emotionally broken as well. And you don't know what to do. The most dangerous time for anybody is when they leave. And on average, I don't know what it is for men. I only know the statistic for women, but on average, a woman who is the victim of domestic violence will try to leave 9 times before she is successful.
Yeah.
And it's particularly difficult when you have children involved, because if you don't have any type of custody order, each parent has equal access to that child, or those children. They're allowed to take the children. It's very, sad.
Because ultimately abuse, domestic violence and abuse like that the motive behind that is to control the other person, right? It's to control. So the emotional manipulation is about control, and then when that doesn't work, then the abuser results to the physical abuse, and that's because they just can't control themselves, right? And so anyway, we're in a little bit of a different rabbit hole now, but I'm just breaking news, y'all. Honeymoon period never lasts.
No, they're only so sorry. They hate themselves, blah 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 blah, until the next time.
It's such a bummer that honeymoon period doesn't last. It's such a bummer because it's such a great time, isn't it? I love the honeymoon period. And then it's such a bummer when you're like, damn, I wish I still felt that way. Well, I think we've been here a while now, and I think we've covered most everything, but unless the chat has any questions specifically for you all, tell me what I know you're covering the Henrietta situation. That is absolutely horrific. Sounds like a massive case. But what else are you guys working on?
Well, for me, I have decided that I'm never going to finish telling the West Memphis 3 story unless I just tell it all. So I am trying to work on compiling the episodes that I did into a single documentary. And then Sarah Boone, her trial is coming up, and I'm going to cover that. And also I intend to cover the Alex Murdaugh boat trial, the civil trial. What else? I am fascinated by this Henrietta case, and I've only been listening to Allie's coverage of it. I've been taking a wait and see kind of approach because there's so much information coming out, and then you find out, and I found out mainly only through Allie what is truth and what is just complete misinformation. And so I'm having a hard time like forming a solid opinion. The only thing I can say is what everybody else has been saying is that it's an abject failure across multiple departments, frankly. But she's doing really great, coverage on that. And, that's for me, that's about it right now that I can think of. I mean, I'm sure something will come up and I'll be like, oh, I have to get on this, so I'm trying to keep it open.
I hope that you'll join me more on the Henrietta thing, on the Henrietta case. And it is hard because of all the misinformation. And, you have the news that sensationalizes stuff. You have 32 phones found at the house. Then it's 32 phones use the house as their location. Come to find out, none of those phones had anything to do with Jesse McFadden. And it's just crazy when you see things like that as they develop. I'm going to keep covering Summer. I'm going to work on some of the Lori and Sarah stuff with Jen and TT. I'm also about to start talking about a new case tomorrow, and her name is Madeline. Let me get it so I can say her last name right. Madeline Pantoja. She's 20 years old. She's missing from Texas. Her best friend has done an interview on the Pascal show. She's a beautiful young lady. Joe Petito tweeted about it. There are rumors that it's similar, like, I don't know if it's domestic violence related. There are rumors of that. I'm doing some digging when we get off here. I'm going to finish, just to present like a opening live on that case. There's not a ton of information yet. She's missing right now. She's a beautiful girl from Texas, and I've shared her photos on my community page. So anybody, in that area or even anywhere close, go check those out in case you never know. You always want to make sure that you know what these people look like in case you run across one of them or something like that. So, yeah. And that's kind of it right now. Oh, I have a big thing with Summer Wells with an AD that's coming up, and I cannot wait to show you guys and talk about it. It's really interesting, some stuff that we've found, Nay found actually, and but it's kind of secretive. It's coming really soon though, so it's going to be really.
Okay, like looking forward to the Summer Wells, man.
Yeah.
Oh God.
Oh, I forgot one thing. Allie and I are going to be, this is on our to-do list. It's been on our to-do list for a very long time. We want to do a charity fundraiser stream that goes, it's through YouTube's charities. She and I will never have anything to touch the money at all. You can only, it's one of those things that you get as a channel that has more than 10,000 subscribers, and Allie hit 13,000 this week. So proud of her.
Congratulations, Allie. I meant to say that at the beginning. Awesome.
I'm so proud of her. And she worked so hard, very well deserved. And so we want to do that. We've been talking about doing it. So now we have to really plan it out, because
tonight I'm gonna do this tonight too. I will find out exactly, because I'm gonna try to choose one that YouTube already has there. So because there is a process to getting other nonprofit charities approved, because last time I looked I saw that. I just think that if we could find one that's already been approved by Google and YouTube and is in the system, and then we can do that whenever. And Lynn, you're welcome to join, because when we do that, I want to invite other creators. I want to make it like big as we can, because your super chat button turns into a charity button. Like she said, we don't get anything. Everything goes to the charity. YouTube doesn't take anything. And I want to try to do like the biggest deal of it that we can,
I'm happy to join.
Okay.
You're being they're Alex.
No, I think I'm good on that. Pass.
Sorry.
I'll pass. I think we're going to
Sorry.
do for Gannett, like a March of Dimes or some kind of hospital. I think that was your idea, Jen. It was a really good idea. Yeah. So I think
something to do with like, because one thing that Gannon's parents during their victims impact statements, they talked a lot about Gannon being in the NICU, and Allie and I both have had sons that had to chill in the NICU for a hot minute before they could come home with us. And so we're going to try to find a charity that's already pre-approved, so we don't have to do. We want this to be completely transparent, and we want people to know exactly where their money is going, and it will never have to filter through either my hands or Allie's hands, or really even YouTube. So we feel like that's the best way to do it. And so, that's what we're planning. So y'all be on the lookout for that.
Yeah.
Very cool. By the way, thank you very, very much, Pointer Lover, for the super chat. Appreciate it very much. There was one other thing I was going to say, but now I'm forgetting. But I'm more than happy to join you. I would love to. And I think that sounds like a great thing. Oh, I know what I was going to say. I messaged Allie after Al Stouck's victim statement. I was absolutely, I think I cried the rest of the day after that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was absolutely heartbreaking. It was so poignant. But hearing him break down and having his new wife standing there next to him, basically holding him up, and his lawyer or the victim advocate, I don't know what it was, but my God. My God.
Ate on the desk, and I'll tell you what, we watched last night on a watching this body language expert, when he's breaking down on the stand, and it is actually the DA, Michael Allen, who him up, like how incredibly kind and sweet of him to be. So I'm just so glad that he was so invested in this the way he was, and he gave it all. And I just thought that was, it makes me want to cry even thinking about it. But when he breaks down up there, that evil hussy, I ain't gonna cuss.
Yes.
I'm trying to cuss over here. That evil hussy looks at him. She barely looks at anybody during anything. She's very still, Chad Daybell-ish like, and that's what the Dr. G compared her to. But when Al breaks down crying, she literally turns and watches, like she is delighting in what she's done. It is so sick. It is so sick. I didn't notice that before I was watching him, but watching that body language expert, and he paused it, and he's like, she's not watching because she feels bad. She is accessing her damages, seeing the damage she's caused. And it's just sick. Ugh.
She's particularly foul. She reminds me a lot of Diane Downs, frankly, in the way that she operates. So does Lori in some respects, but Lori is, don't get me wrong, Lori is every bit as dangerous as both Leticia Stouck and Diane Downs. She just goes about it differently. She's softer in her approach, but make no mistake, she's equally dangerous. And yeah, I believe she has some mental health issues. Sure. I think but what I don't think is that her mental health impaired her to such an extent that she was incapable of knowing what she was doing and understanding right from wrong, quite frankly.
That's the issue with people having such ignorance about mental health. And I thought that the judge's sentencing speech was one among the best I'd ever heard, because he was distinguishing very carefully and with plain language the difference between knowing that the behavior of someone who knows what they did was wrong and is covering it up, and a person who did something out of, in the state of psychosis and is now having to face it, and he distinguished that very carefully. And he talked about how her behavior showed that she was absolutely carefully plan, not only planning, but also planning the way she was going to try to get away with it in multiple ways. And that shows the difference between someone who knows right from wrong and someone who just did something in an altered state and is now snapped out of it and is like, oh shit, what did I just do? Big difference, So anyway, I just want to thank you very much for being the kinds of creators that you are. I wish there were more like you. And I want to highlight more people like you. And I, look forward to seeing more of your coverage of true crime.
Well, thank you very much. It's always nice to get complimented like that. It makes me a little uncomfortable. I don't really know how to take it, but I mean, I'm just awkward like that, but I do appreciate it. And it does mean a lot when I get told, you're doing a good job. I do appreciate it. It's nice to hear. I just don't always know how to take compliments. I'm kind of awkward like that.
Well,
I should have just said thank you and left it alone, but then I had to go and be extra and make it weird for everybody. So sorry.
Okay.
Hey, and you're the same. Don't, I gotta say that because you put so much care and thought into all of your content, and so you are the exact same. And thank you so much. I really do appreciate that. To me, like when people give you compliments like that, like about your work and your like in that kind of way, it feels so. It means it's special. It means a lot. You know what I mean? So I appreciate it. Thank you.
You do a really wonderful job, Lynn. I mean, I've watched your content and I've come away being like, I don't think about it like that, which I know is your goal. And it takes ask Allie. She knows that when I get a thought in my brain, it's very difficult for me to come. I mean, I can see the way other people are thinking, right? I can see their point of view, but I very rarely will like change my point of view. Allie has been able to do it. Truth Teller has been able to do it. And I've come away from your content being like, maybe I should think about it like this, or I didn't consider that. And I will change, my way of thinking. So, I think you do a good job, a really good job.
I very much appreciate that. I thank you very much. And now I don't know what else. Now I don't know. Compliment. No, I very much appreciate that. I don't like to come across pretentious, I think, but I also want people to know that what my goal is to help you broaden your perspective. I have a very, very broad perspective, and I want, and I know a lot of other people have very broad perspectives as well. And I want to hear their perspectives too. So
Yeah.
I think we all learn from that, and it's the way we grow and learn. So anyway, I'm going to play us out with my little theme music, and for anybody who wants, I did the people, hey, Sandy says the people on panel are Jen Liu and Alex Erickson, and I put their links in the chat. If you guys can't see them, let me know and I'll put them in again. If you haven't been able to catch the whole stream, check it out again. We had a nice little conversation, and there was even a little bit of comic relief. Very tasteful roasting of Melanie Gibb.
Yeah, Melanie, I'm sorry, but I am not going to come around to changing my mind about Melanie. I'm firm. I've tried as much as I can, but let me just say this. Melanie Gibb, the friendship door is closed. We ain't never going to be friends. You're not my kind of gal.
Don't call me. Do not.
No. Don't call me. No.
Do not call me. The door is. Oh, you know what? Actually, really quickly here, I'm going to put this on this is my dog's face in the background. Can you see it?
Yes.
But we're blocking it. All right, I'm going to play us out now. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Lynn.
All right, bye.
Bye.
Guess I should have known. No, now my mind is blown. No, surprise. Guess I should have known. No, no. Now my mind is blown. No, surprise. Guess I should have.